I judge people based on their TSA etiquette. Who is it?
Someone who travels.
Jonah,
No?
Jonah, you had a suitcase in your dressing room.
I did.
Yes.
But and I will tell you this: I do judge people by their TSA etiquette, but it wasn't me.
It wasn't.
I was going to guess Haley, but you guessed Jonah. So LZ?
It is me.
Shocker.
It is me. Why do you judge people by their TSA etiquette?
'Cause I fly so much that I feel like it's incredibly rude to not respect other people's time when other people. Yeah.
Yeah, act like you've been there before. Like, this always works the same.
Yeah.
Well, some people literally have not been there before.
I get that, but that doesn't mean you don't get to stack your own bin. It's like, well, I haven't been there before, so I won't stack this bin and make everyone wait in the line as all these empty bins stack up on the
Don't you think
conveyor
it's
belt.
weird that people at this point they act like they haven't even heard of airport security? So they get there and they're
Yes.
completely
Yes.
Flustered.
like, they're like, what do I do with my bag? And
Yes.
do I put my things inside of it? It's like, yes.
There's also the most inexcusable shame. I mean, I really feel like I should be cutting myself. Is when I screw up. Like if I have a bottle of water in my bag, and I'm like, such a rookie move, and I hate myself for it. But
Punishment is always greatest for the vet who makes a rookie mistake like that.
My husband said he'd leave me if I don't get TSA pre-check by the end of the year. So
I'm sorry.
I don't. I travel all the time. and
Alyssa, what did you
I have
just say?
clear, but I don't have TSA pre-check.
is
It's the biggest red flag about me.
You know what's so funny? I was the same way for the longest time. I had clear, but I didn't have TSA pre-check. It was something about the numbers.
Yeah, it also seems like it takes a lot of time, but also
Guys,
saves time.
That's crazy.
It is crazy.
And also, pre-check is faster than clear at a lot of airports.
Yes.
And they have it at every airport. Like, clear
Yeah.
isn't at every airport. I
Yeah.
also don't understand, like, you're in the line for so long, you're seeing everyone else get ready. You're not going to get ready.
Right.
You don't know where your passport is. You get to the man, you're like, whatever, you're like, you had all this time to prepare.
I know.
The only people I make total allowances for, because I've been there, are people with babies, with little kids and strollers. It's a living
But
hell
I
trying
actually
to travel.
feel like they're the most prepared.
They are, because they worry about it.
Yeah, I mean, as somebody who's traveled with a baby before, it's like, you spend many hours thinking about your strategy going
Yes.
into TSA because it's a thing.
But as you know, things go wrong. The sippy cut rolls under
Right.
something.
Yeah, there's
or-
somebody forgets to take the milk out of the cup, and it's a problem.
But sometimes, and as I said, I judge TSA etiquette, so it's not just about the TSA people going through, but it's also the TSA workers too.
Our culture cares too much about the opinions of young people.
This is definitely Jonah.
Correct.
She didn't even wait for confirmation. She was like, yeah, it's you.
This is absolute.
Define young people first. How are you defining young people?
Well, since we were talking about planes, my view is anybody who's in front of me on a plane is taking way too long and is really slow, and anyone behind me is really impatient. So anyone younger than me is young. No, I'm kidding. I basically think America's had this issue for a very long time, but the popular culture, advertising, everything is aimed at basically 16 to 24-year-olds, whatever that demo is, right? And our politics is obsessed with this idea if we have the youth on our side, we're going to win the future and all this kind of thing. And I get all that because that's trying to capture a market that's a heavy consumer and all that kind of stuff, and that you're trying to lock in voters for a long time. I get the strategy of it. What bothers me about it is I think a lot of youth politics is like the cheapest form of identity politics.
Yeah.
The idea that just because you're young and really passionate, and to a certain extent, I mean, ignorant, the simple fact is if you're charting it, when you're born, you don't know anything.
Yeah.
And then you're getting over that ignorance as you get older. But we have this culture, and from Hollywood to politics, that says young people, they've got this special insight. They see the world for what it really is. And we kind of have this deference going back to the baby boomers of sort of just deferring to them because they have passion. I think democracy is more about arguments, and I want to hear
But
arguments.
isn't it also true that older people have just gotten used to how crappy everything is, and so they excuse it? And younger people don't do that, and so that's why it's worth listening
The
to
other
them.
side of
'Cause-
that coin is ingratitude because they don't know how much better things are for them than they were for the earlier generations.
Or, I mean, well, Okay.
I mean, but, like,
I don't
look at
know.
the
I mean,
economic-
is that true? I was going to ask
Yeah,
you,
like
Miss Economics.
Like,
but-
look at like the American dream. Like, you could have, you know, a quote unquote older person telling the younger generation, like, oh my gosh, you know, just get a job, you know, go to school, take out loans, buy a house, all these things, and that's completely outdated. So
Yeah, look, I'm not saying we don't have problems. I'm not saying that young people don't face specific challenges, but young people always face specific challenges. You know, we're at the 250th, you know, anniversary of America at the bicentennial when I was a little kid. America was in a much worse place than it is today in a lot of ways. And we are about 2.5 times wealthier than we were in 1976. But to listen to people, there's actually in polling, there are all these people, especially, you know, 18 to 25-year-olds who talk about how America was better off in 50 years ago when crime was much higher. I mean, crime is in this city is much lower today than it was 50 years ago. But we have this tendency, there's a bad news bias in media, there's a bad news bias in social media, and there's this tendency of young people to catastrophize about how the world is so unfair to them. And I'm not saying that there aren't unfair things that are happening to kids, to young people, but all kids feel that way. I mean, everyone who was in their
I don't know,
felt
Jonah.
that way.
I think you might be conflating two different sort of tracks, right? There's the track in which, yes, there's a great deal of American society, American culture that gravitates towards youth. You know, I remember, and I teach at Western Michigan University, and this is one of my first lectures that I give about, is identifying nostalgia in all the generations. And the reason why you do that is it helps you guide how you do multimedia, right? If you want to reach older people, what's the nostalgia point in their generation, so on and so forth. I bring that up because Life magazine did this big story identifying, you know, the teenager. And that's, to your point, where all this came from. Prior to that, young people just worked like everyone else and no one really cared per se, but they still were the impetus behind a lot of change in society, whether they were behind a political party or not, whether they were corralled around marketing or not. I think young people have always been the driver. They've always been the pusher. And I think capitalism requires that to happen because that's where innovation comes from. It comes from the youth. It comes from that drive to want to change things.
Also, look, it's great being young. You're better looking, you're healthier. I mean, there's all sorts of wonderful things that go with being young, but they'd have less experience with a lot of things.
But Elsie's point is important because it's like the discontent drives change, and change is what drives progress.
Yeah.
And if you don't have young people complaining about things, then things just won't change, and we won't advance.
I got no problem with people complaining. I want.
Surprise,
I just want arguments. I want people to marshal facts and data and make an argument not based entirely on feelings, because feelings can mislead you. Like, I mean, if I made this exact argument about populism, I get a lot of nodding heads because populism prioritizes passion over reason. It prioritizes groups and group identity over the individual. Well, youth politics is a form of populism, and it's got good things about it, and it's got bad things about it. And also, I mean, to your point, capitalism exploits this stuff better than it. I mean, in CBS Records in 1968, I think, their ad campaign was "The man can't bust our music," right? I mean, like, they get into all of this stuff too, you know.
So I half agree with you. I do think there's an overemphasis, in both political parties do, of wanting to know what the young people care about, and then perhaps working backward to try to appease them in the way that they're going about getting votes. I don't think that's necessarily constructive because oftentimes you're driven more by passions than by policy. But you hit on something very important. It's actually never been harder to get ahead in America. If you're looking at like the last 50 years, compared to 1980 to right now, the cost of attending college average was $8,000. Now you have dozens of schools that are $100,000 plus to attend. Like, we're lucky for our generation. Most of my friends are talking about, I'm not going to own a home for 20 years. My best case is that like my parents die and I inherit money. Like, the financial situation of this generation and the next one is just drastically different. And there is this feeling, I think it's happening with politicians on both sides of the aisle, they don't recognize how bad it is. They don't realize this moment of discontent and how much we have been left behind by the American dream.
When people without medical degrees insist on being called doctor, it's a sign of insecurity.
I love this so much.
That's so good.
Oh, this is a confession?
Yes, but whose is it?
Well, I feel
I want to
like
say Jonah.
Yeah.
Ding, ding, ding. It's so much easier to predict what I guess because I'm a curmudgeon.
yeah, exactly.
It's a
Absolute
cultural
curmudgeon.
thing. Yeah, Jonah.
Well,
Is
in
it?
different, in certain fields.
I'll give you. I'll give
Yeah.
people in the hard sciences a pass if you're like a physicist or a biologist kind of thing. But I find maybe it's because I just travel in a lot of these circles. There are a lot of, and again, it's if you're on campus and you want your students to call you doctor or professor, that's a sign of respect. That's all fine. But I found I'll cut to the chase because we're going to get there eventually. I thought the Dr. Jill Biden thing.
I knew it. I knew it.
See, okay, what I was gonna,
Bullshit.
that's what I was going to say is that in particularly in education,
Yeah.
Yes.
this is not just common, but it's that is the norm. If you have a PhD in an education related field, they're calling each other doctor.
Yeah.
This and doctor.
And I think that's a sign of insecurity because education PhDs are iffy.
No, they're doctorates. They're literally doctorates.
By the way, my dear friend Jess Tarlov on Fox News is a PhD and will not allow people to call her doctor because she finds it incredibly cringe. So she's with you on this.
I think it's cringe in the sense that when people hear that, they think you can help them with something physical.
Yeah, like
Right.
if you can't save us on the plane, if
Right.
you're not like, maybe.
If you're
I
not-
just blame the people who came up with these names. The fact that we can't differentiate between
exactly.
a medical doctor and other
That's a
doctors
great point.
is not. It's not the fault of the doctor.
I also
It's
have,
the
like-
fault of the
And I might take the label. Like if someone said you could be called doctor, I don't know, maybe I want, like that's sorry, like I might want to be. I'm not saying that it's not cringe, but like they throw that at you. You're
But
gonna
like
say no.
when I worked in the White House, I was an assistant to the president. I'm technically the Honorable Alyssa Farah. I would literally never call myself that. Not
I'm
because
gonna call you that.
Like, and when I would see peers of mine who did, like after being out of government service, I was like, why are we doing this?
the Honorable Alyssa Farah.
Like you're not a Supreme Court justice.